Formula One, the biggest motorsport series in the world, came to the United States this past weekend and went up head-to-head against America's favorite motorsport, NASCAR, in the exact same time slot. Here's how the two sides fared against each other. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. I hope your week is going well. We've got a couple news stories to touch on before we talk about NASCAR and F1. What can we learn about the data from this recent weekend? First, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We talk NASCAR news, notes, rumors, predictions, race recaps, and much, much more all throughout the week. We even have special guests on the show from time to time. Got some exciting things in store for later this week, in fact. Let's talk some news. First off, NASCAR revealed the current top 10 in All-Star Race fan voting. The All-Star Race is now less than 2 weeks away. Now, these aren't the top 10 in order of number of votes. This is the top 10 alphabetically. Chris Buescher, Harrison Burton, Cole Custer, Austin Dillon, Justin Haley, Eric Jones, Corey LaJoie, Tyler Reddick, Daniel Suarez, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. make up the top 10. Remember, the All-Star Open takes place just before the All-Star Race. It's 3 stages with the winner of each stage moving on to the main event, plus a 4th spot going to the fan vote winner. If you want to race in 2021 or 2022, you're automatically qualified in, which is why like Michael McDowell, Bubba Wallace, they're locked into the main event. If you haven't won a race in the last year and a half or you don't qualify for one of the other provisionals, you're in the All-Star Open and you have a chance of being voted in by the fans. If we look at the names that are currently in that top 10, to me, Tyler Reddick would be my clear pick. Like, he's been the best performing driver and team out of everyone there. Don't have all the finishes to show for it, but he has been so close to getting that win several times this year. So I hope Reddick makes it in either through the Open or the fan vote. I think if he doesn't win the fan vote, he'll win a stage. In fact, if we look at that All-Star Open, I think Tyler Reddick will win a stage. I think Eric Jones will win a stage, and I think Austin Dillon will win a stage. So those three, I think, will make it in the race. That fan vote spot could go to Daniel Suarez. Maybe Ricky Stenhouse, because he's been around a while, would steal it. I don't know who the favorite to win the fan vote is of that group, but just something I wanted to highlight. You guys can vote for your favorite driver over at NASCAR.com. I assume you have almost 2 weeks to still do that. Next up, not NASCAR news directly, but the Superstar Racing Experience, the SRX, will debut their 2nd season next month. And today they announced that Chase Elliott, 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champion, will race in the season finale at Sharon Speedway. Chase Elliott's gonna do some dirt track racing with the SRX. Of course, Elliott raced in the SRX season finale last year as well against his father, Bill Elliott. It was a big spectacle. They sold t-shirts and everything, Battle of the Elliots, etc. Chase Elliott won that race, so he's going to attempt to go 2 for 2 in his SRX career this year. That race, of course, is in July. I'm excited for the new season. We'll talk a little more SRX as we get closer to their season 2 debut, but wanted to mention that real quick. Good to see Chase Elliott, the most popular driver in NASCAR, not shying away from other events. I think the more he can get his face and name out there, especially amongst race fans, the better for him, his brand, and NASCAR. And, you know, speaking of brands and what's good for the sport, the health of stock car racing, that kind of conversation, let's talk NASCAR versus Formula One. Formula One held their all-new, highly anticipated Miami Grand Prix at the exact same time NASCAR raced at Darlington this past Sunday. Literally, lights out were at like 3:34 Eastern, something like that, and the green flag for Darlington was like 3:47. Started at roughly the same time. Of course, the F1 race ended, midway through the NASCAR race. The Cup race was double the length of the F1 race, but they went head-to-head directly for the first time this year. A lot of buzz around that Miami race. If you followed along on social media, or if you watched the race, of course, you saw the star power that came out. 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton taking photos with Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, David Beckham. The glitz and the glamour that you'd expect were very prevalent down in Miami, and the grit and the grime that you'd expect from NASCAR was very prevalent at Darlington. So how did the two fare in terms of viewership? NASCAR has been king in the United States for as long as I've been alive, but Formula One, king of the world, has seen a sudden boost in popularity here stateside. So let's talk about the numbers. Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal tweeted this morning, NASCAR Cup Series at Darlington on FS1 had a 1.45 rating and 2.614 million viewers, while F1 at Miami on ABC got a 1.08 rating and 2.066 million viewers. So NASCAR, despite being on cable television, F1 was on broadcast, still won the weekend in terms of total viewership. which isn't surprising. F1 has gotten much more popular in the United States, but it still doesn't come that close to NASCAR from a sheer numbers perspective. Miami got 2 million viewers. That is their most watched live race in the United States, I think, ever. And it still wasn't that close to NASCAR on cable. But let's go back to that Adam Stern tweet, because there is a key detail there that is somewhat concerning if you're NASCAR. In the coveted age 18 to 49 demographic, the NASCAR Cup Series race drew 517,000 viewers, whereas 735,000 tuned in to the F1 race. So, to summarize, NASCAR got more viewers than F1 despite being on cable, but in that younger demographic that is typically seen as more valuable to advertisers, Formula One had more than 200,000 more tune into their race. So it's weird, it's a total flip-flop. What that tells you is that NASCAR still to this day, despite the many strides they've taken in recent years, it still has one of the oldest average fan bases of any major American sport. That's concerning for NASCAR, that trend has not really reversed much at all in recent years. Despite a couple years ago, NASCAR was named as one of the fastest growing brands among Gen Z, which I'm 24, I think I'm like right on the edge of Gen Z millennial. NASCAR was being seen by people my age and a little younger just a couple years ago, yet that doesn't seem to have translated into a serious uptick in young eyeballs. As always, the question is, how does NASCAR attract younger viewers without completely dismissing the older viewership that still anchors the sport? Everyone looks at what Drive to Survive on Netflix did for F1 and says NASCAR should have their own Netflix series. And I don't know about that. I worry that if NASCAR tried to do the exact same thing Formula One has done, especially if it was with Netflix, it would be seen as kind of a lesser copycat. An uncreative desperation attempt by NASCAR, if you will, to ride F1's coattail. So I think NASCAR is going to need to get a little more creative and think a little more outside the box. But honestly, before NASCAR even does that, before NASCAR tries to make a serious marketing push, NASCAR needs to adjust the product, namely the presentation. NASCAR needs better TV coverage. NASCAR needs alternative viewing options, the way F1 has like F1 TV Pro. We used to have Race View, that's been dead and gone for a couple of years. NASCAR needs better social media. In some ways they have gotten better in recent years, but in other ways like their YouTube channel, which still does not upload most highlights in full HD. NASCAR needs a better video game series, for sure. Video games are largely how I got into the sport as a kid. NASCAR needs a better at-track experience. Some of these facilities just are not up to modern day standards. And NASCAR drivers need to be willing to do more media in general, social media, traditional media, TV, etc. Many of NASCAR's veteran drivers kind of just sit idly by and don't want to do that. So NASCAR still has a lot they need to refine if they want to retain any new young fans they may attract. Compare to Formula One. When Netflix released Drive to Survive and suddenly a ton of new eyeballs were looking at the sport, F1 was able to retain many of those eyeballs because they already had fantastic presentation and in many ways a very solid product. Think about all the things I just said NASCAR needs to improve. Formula One has fantastic TV coverage. It's commercial free, it's serious. They have a great alternative viewing option. I mentioned F1 TV Pro. F1 has a strong social media presence and they have a tremendous video game, a very high budget video game. Their at-track experience is glamorous. I mean, it's somewhat exclusive. Sure, that's a criticism, but it is state of the art. You can't deny that. And lastly, contrary to many veteran NASCAR drivers, Formula One drivers aren't afraid of the media at all. They're not afraid of the cameras. They actively seek out those types of media opportunities. And I think that does a lot for the growth of their sport. So I just named 6, 7 things that are almost polar opposite between F1 and NASCAR, and that I think are all ways NASCAR could easily improve their product and the presentation of their product before they make a major marketing push towards younger fans. It's much easier said than done. NASCAR is a difficult sport for the average person who knows nothing about it to get into. It is, it just is. Even if you go to a race for the first time, you're an all new fan, don't know much about NASCAR, you show up to a race at Darlington or Bristol or Talladega, going to a NASCAR race is amazing, is super fun, is life-changing for a certain demographic. That's just the truth. It's a culture shock. NASCAR is going to have to continue to push past some of the negative stereotypes that we've talked about. You know, oh, it's just rednecks racing for 4 hours in circles. Who's going to watch that? They got to push past that to start. If you want to know how the general public views NASCAR compared to Formula One, I mean, let's look at Netflix. It's a perfect example. Netflix made a serious, dramatic documentary series for Formula One, and a couple of years later, they made a goofy, multi-camera sitcom starring an aging comedian for NASCAR. complete with a laugh track and everything. Like, I'm sorry, people my age, the vast majority at least, are not watching those types of shows. But they are watching trendy documentaries. Like, documentaries on Netflix have gone viral in recent years. Drive to Survive is one example, Tiger King, Fire Festival. Young fans are watching that. They're not watching multicam sitcoms. That just tells you all you need to know. That's how the general public compares NASCAR and Formula One. And so NASCAR is gonna have to push past that. And it will not be easy. It all starts with changing the presentation, and in some cases I think changing the product, but just comparing the numbers, it's clear NASCAR still has work to do to attract young fans. Formula One, at least in the short term, has managed to pique the attention of younger audiences in America. Some questions still remain, how long will that interest last? Has Formula One maybe neared its peak? Will it eventually come down? Could it come crashing down? Will it stay at this peak for a long, long time? Will it continue to grow? There are still very, very many questions about Formula One's growth and how consistent it will be. But there's one question we already know the answer to. Is NASCAR attracting young fans? The answer is no. Not at the rate they are hoping to, and that I think they need to if they want to continue to be America's favorite motorsport for decades to come. Obviously, I'm a NASCAR fan first. Like, sure, I do think in some cases a rising tide raises all ships. If Formula One does well in America, that could help NASCAR because there'll be crossover appeal. I fully believe a lot of that is true, but personally, I enjoy NASCAR much more as a product. I think the racing in NASCAR is just better, is far more interesting and engaging than what we see in Formula One on a regular basis. So I'm always going to be partial to NASCAR. I tried. I just can't get into Formula One the same way. I don't want Formula One to crash and burn and fail in America by any means, but I care much more about NASCAR and stock car racing, and I would much rather see them have success than I would Formula One. That's not me bashing Formula One. I'm just being honest. I care more about NASCAR. Those of you who watch both, I know many of you watch both very, very religiously. More power to you. I do enjoy Formula One when I watch it, but not to the level I enjoy NASCAR. That's all I'm saying. Share your thoughts down below. This is a discussion, a debate that will be ongoing for months, years to come, and it's very complicated. We just scratched the surface today. There are tons of other theories out there that I think have a ton of merit, other ways NASCAR can maybe change or alter their product to improve it, to attract those younger fans, things Formula One is doing right and doing wrong. There is so much more we could talk about on this topic, but I'm gonna leave it here for the day. We're just talking about those ratings and those numbers. But I do want to hear some of your theories down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. And as always, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. I truly appreciate your support each and every month. It really helps the show out a ton. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got a few different videos planned this week. I got something exciting to show y'all in a couple of days I'm really hyped about. Until then, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next video.